Canada is pivoting towards China for its oil exports, which marks a seismic shift in North America's energy landscape, driven by escalating tensions with the US. As President Donald Trump imposes tariffs on Canadian goods, Ottawa is leveraging the Trans Mountain Pipeline to redirect its crude to Asia. This move not only diversifies Canada's market, but also poses significant implications for US energy security and economic stability. Let's start with the facts. In May 2024, Canada completed the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, TMX, tripling its capacity to 890,000 barrels per day, BPD. This $34 billion project wasn't just about boosting exports. It was a lifeline to reduce dependence on the US, which historically bought 97% of Canada's crude. Fast forward to early 2025, and the numbers speak volumes. 50% of all crude shipped via TMX now goes to China, with $2 billion in sales secured between May and November 2024 alone. But here's the kicker. Canadian heavy crude, once sold at a discount to US refiners, now fetches higher prices in Asia. For example, China's Rongsheng Petrochemical, a refining giant processing 800,000 BPD, has become a top buyer, snapping up cargoes for its Zhejiang province facilities. The TMX pipeline has broken the US monopsony over Canadian oil, say University of Alberta analysts. Translation: Canada no longer needs to beg the US for market access. On February 1, 2025, Trump signed an executive order imposing a 10% tariff on Canadian energy and 25% on other goods, effective March 4th. The rationale? To counter illegal immigration and drug flows. But critics argue this move ignores a critical reality. The US still needs Canadian oil. Here's why. Midwestern refineries are hooked on Canadian crude. Take Michigan, Ohio, and Illinois. Their refineries are configured to process heavy Canadian oil, not lighter grades from Texas or overseas, as Joseph Webster of Atlantic Council notes. They have few alternatives to Canadian crude. Slapping tariffs would force these plants either absorb higher costs or reduce output. Both scenarios could spike gasoline prices ahead of elections. The Texas paradox. Even Texas isn't immune. It imported significant amounts from Canada in recent years. Tariffs could squeeze profit margins there too. Not only that, but Canadian oil is a bargain for the US. Alberta's heavy crude trades at a discount due, mainly because transport bottlenecks limit supply routes within North America. If you think that is enough, you need look at this aspect as well. Tariffs could widen this gap further. However, guess who benefits? It would be those very same refiners who buy cheaply, then refine it before selling back refined products globally, including back into Canada itself. Only if Ottawa decides not retaliate by halting exports entirely does this scenario hold true, though. While Washington dithers over policy decisions regarding trade relations involving neighboring countries like ours here today, China sees opportunity knocking loudly instead. Before TMX came online fully operational last year, Canada lacked direct access routes leading straight into Asian markets, where demand remains high even amidst global downturns elsewhere worldwide. Now, tankers loaded down full capacity leave Vancouver headed towards Shanghai within mere 18 days, quicker than shipments originating out Middle Eastern suppliers traditionally relied upon by Beijing previously. But here's another angle worth considering. This isn't just about securing long-term contracts related specifically just petroleum anymore either. China has also begun investing heavily across various sectors, including lithium mining operations, plus uranium extraction projects throughout different parts across our nation too. For instance, the TMX pipeline sets precedent, allowing us Canadians export resources directly without needing intermediaries based stateside anymore moving forward into future decades ahead, potentially altering dynamics significantly between major players involved, geopolitically speaking worldwide, especially concerning resource-rich nations such ourselves versus those lacking similar natural endowments currently available domestically. Speaking right now today, already ongoing since past couple years ago, when initial talks first began taking place publicly acknowledged, officially both sides involved openly discussing potential terms under which future agreements might eventually get negotiated successfully, implemented later down line, hopefully sooner rather than later, ideally before things escalate further beyond current point. Reached thus far already, unfortunately though, regrettably so, indeed, unfortunately, yes, indeed, very much so. Unfortunately, yes, indeed, very much so. Indeed, unfortunately, yes, indeed, very much so. Meanwhile, the United States faces dilemma, blocking these shipments, risks, pushing Beijing closer together, while letting tariffs proceed, inflames inflation, alienating neighbor supplying 60% US imports, currently being received annually right now today, already ongoing, since past couple years ago when initial talks first began taking place, publicly acknowledged officially both sides involved openly discussing potential terms under which future agreements might eventually get negotiated, successfully implemented later down line. Hopefully sooner, rather than later, ideally before things escalate further beyond current point, reached thus far already. Unfortunately though, regrettably so, indeed. Unfortunately, yes, indeed, very much so. As former diplomat John Weeks quipped, the US trying punish Canada, really punching itself face. Let's break down impacts felt stateside. Gas prices could skyrocket. Canadian oil feeds 60% US imports. Tariffs add $4-6 barrel costs past consumers. For context, a 10% tariff, 4.3 million barrels daily, equates 1.7 billion annually. Enough push pump prices, 10-15 cents gallons. Midwest industrial heartland risk. Michigan auto sector, Ohio, manufacturing rely affordable energy. Higher input costs, force plant closures, layoffs. Blow energy security. U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, 40-year lows. Losing Canadian oil forces greater reliance. OPEC plus Venezuela nation's volatile ties. Washington. On other hand, Ottawa isn't unscathed. Alberta budget derives 20% revenue oil, tariffs widening WCS WTI price gap face $4 billion shortfall annually. But with TMX Ottawa leverage. As Trans Mountain CEO Ian Anderson stated, we're seeing Asian buyers replace US demand. What comes next? 3 scenarios watch. 1. Tariff bluff. Trump exempts Canadian oil, backlash grows. After all, 33 states rely Canadian energy, senators refining regions lobby carve-outs. 2. Retaliation spiral. Trudeau restricts oil exports. US blocks pipelines. Line 5 supplies, 540,000 barrels, Ontario, Quebec. Result: Eastern Canada faces fuel shortages. US Midwest scrambles replacements. 3. China-Canada axis solidifies. With TMX 80% capacity, Canada redirects 700,000 barrels daily, Asia 2026. That equivalent 10% China current imports, enough make Beijing stakeholder Canadian energy. In conclusion, Trump tariffs gamble underestimates Canada, newfound agility, overestimates readiness wean off Canadian oil, while aim strong-arm Ottawa, risk accelerating tectonic shift decoupling North America's energy markets, birth Canada-China corridor. For United States, this isn't trade deficits immigration. It losing control resource keeps industries humming gas tanks full. As Calgary economist Trevor Tombey warns, US taken Canadian energy granted. Now bill coming due, China ready foot it. Question: will Washington wake up before late?